Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside One Piece. He later becomes an admiral and he starts taking bribes. What is he gonna do inside of One Piece?
Pirate, I'm an admiral now. What's wrong with taking a little extra money? In the year 1494 of the sea calendar, the era of locks ended, but the age of exploration had not yet begun. Kane transmigrated to this world and was admitted to the Navy's elite training camp, but unexpectedly awakened the most despicable justice system. As long as you violate naval discipline, you can become infinitely stronger. Thus, in this naval headquarters that should have been filled with passion and justice, the atmosphere completely went astray. You take the new recruit Zan to the entertainment district to lead a group of patrons. Cough, to assess public sentiment. Reward, mastery of the 6 styles. You extorted 50 billion from Germa and embezzled military funds. Reward, Logia-type storm fruit. You successfully brainwashed the future fleet admiral by indoctrinating Akinu with the idea that double-crossing is absolute justice. Reward, Zanpakuto Zanjetsu. Sakazuki, where does military funding come from without money? Kane is right. The more money I take, the more thoroughly justice is served. Borsellino, leaving get-off work on time to slack off, is the true essence of the Navy that Kane taught me. Tilda. The 5 elders. Kane may be greedy, but his heart belongs only to our world government. He is the sharpest nail driven into the Navy. Jin, brother Kane. Tonight, I'd like to continue asking you for guidance on swordsmanship. Years later, when Kane looked at the 3 admirals of the Navy, Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and a group of top-tier fighters, all of whom he had led astray, he helplessly shrugged. I really just wanted to rack up some disciplinary points at first. How did I accidentally become the king of the world? Teacher Zephyr, you are my second parents. Heiyuan Calendar, 1494. Marine Headquarters, Marineford. Arrah. The distinctive cries of seagulls outside the window roused Kane from his slumber. My head hurts so much. He rubbed his throbbing temples and sat up on the hard bed. What comes into view is a very simple naval dormitory. Besides the bed and the table and chairs, only an old Navy uniform hung on the wall with the word Justice on the back standing out starkly in the morning light. Unfamiliar memories flooded back like a tide. Kane, the orphan of a rear admiral, lost his father, who died a heroic death in the Battle of God Valley a few years ago while protecting his comrades. He had just been admitted to this year's elite naval training camp. I've been transporting to the One Piece world. Kane's pupils dilated, and his lips twitched involuntarily. What a joke. This timing is absolutely hellish for the start. Roger was still roaming the world. Shiki hadn't yet stuck the helm on his head. Whitebeard was in his prime, taking down kids with a single punch, and Kaido was probably still practicing jumping off buildings in some corner only he knew about. In this era, there are no 7 warlords of the sea to maintain balance, and no 4 emperors to rule the seas. There is only pure chaos and slaughter. And he, a greenhorn who had just joined the camp. And many more. Kane's gaze suddenly froze on the mechanical clock on the wall. The clock hands mercilessly pointed to 8:05. As I recall, today is the opening ceremony of the Zephyr Elite Training Camp, and the assembly time is 8 o'clock sharp. Grass. On the first day of camp, was he late for the opening ceremony of Black Wrist Zephyr? This isn't just daring to offend the Grand Duke Jupiter. It's like taking a dump right on top of him. Kane scrambled to put on his uniform, ripped off his tie haphazardly, even buttoning it wrong, and rushed out of the dormitory like a madman. You absolutely must make it. Marineford, training ground number 1. The chilling atmosphere was almost tangible. Hundreds of elite recruits selected from naval branches around the world are now lined up in neat square formations, each with their chests out and stomachs in, not daring to breathe too loudly. Everyone stood tall and proud, their eyes fixed on the man on the platform with fervent gazes. He was as tall and imposing as a mountain, with his purple hair flying in the wind. Current Admiral and Chief Instructor of the Navy Headquarters, Black Fist, Zephyr. Zephyr crossed his arms, his eyes behind his sunglasses sharp as a hawk's, scrutinizing these future pillars of the Navy. Listen up, newbies. Zephyr's voice was deep and resonant, and it could be clearly heard by everyone without needing a megaphone. From today onwards, you will have only one identity, the Navy. Once you put on this uniform, you must be prepared to die for justice at any time. Discipline is the lifeblood of the Army. I will personally throw any scum who disregards discipline into the sea to feed the fish. Just as Zephyr was giving his instructions, a furtive figure appeared at the edge of the training field. Kane crouched low, hunching his shoulders, trying to slip silently in from the back of the line. However, he was being too optimistic. His short, golden hair, inherited from his mother, shone brightly in the sunlight, making it impossible for him to go unnoticed. Almost the instant he stepped onto the training field. That blonde bastard over there. A loud shout, like a thunderclap, echoed as it struck the ground. Kane froze. Zephyr's fingers, from a distance of 100 meters, precisely locked onto him. SHH. All eyes turned to the disheveled blonde boy. 3 particularly noticeable gazes were cast over from the front of the queue. A man with a cigar in his mouth and wearing a baseball cap had a furrowed brow and undisguised disgust in his eyes. The tall, thin man with an afro and sunglasses next to him had a playful smile on his lips, as if to say, "This is going to be interesting." The third, tall, curly-haired young man looked at him with a worried expression. Sakazuki, Borsellino, Cusin. The 3 future generals. My unlucky contemporaries. Tell me your name. Zephyr's voice was eerily calm, like the stillness before a volcanic eruption. Kane steeled himself and stepped out from the back of the line, giving a fairly standard military salute under the gaze of hundreds of eyes. Reporting, Chief Instructor. Trainee Kane. Kane, Zephyr frowned even more deeply. General Kate's son. Yes, sir. Kane stood at attention, his voice booming. Very good. Zephyr's voice suddenly rose in pitch. You're trying to inherit the glory your father earned with his life by being late. By wearing this rag that can't even tie his tie properly. Are you insulting the word justice? The sound waves rolled in, making Kane's eardrums buzz. Being publicly berated by the legendary Admiral in front of all his future colleagues, Kane felt his cheeks burning and wished he could immediately use moonwalk to escape this planet. However, at that moment, ding! Host misconduct detected. The most shameless justice system is officially activated. Disciplinary action is being determined. Being late to the assembly, base score +1. Untidy appearance, base score +1. Total base score, 2 points. Triggered witness factor. Witness, Zephyr, Admiral class. Disciplinary points, gained X5. Page 2. Witnesses, Sakazuki, Borsellino, Cusin, future Admiral level potential. Disciplinary points, gained X3. Final calculation. Congratulations, host. You have gained 30 disciplinary points. Hey. Kane was stunned. System. My cheat code has arrived. The next second, a blue light screen that only he could see unfolded before his eyes. The most despicable justice system. Host Kane. Disciplinary value, 30. Enhancement, lottery, storage space. Shop, not yet unlocked. The simple and clear panel allowed Kane to understand everything instantly. Breaking rules will make you stronger. The higher the status of the person who sees it, the greater the reward. Being late in front of Admiral Zephyr and the 3 future admirals results in an explosive increase in rewards. Kane's breathing suddenly became rapid. He subconsciously raised his head and looked again at the head instructor on the high platform, who was furious and exuding an aura of power. At this moment, in Kane's eyes, Zeph was no longer the awe-inspiring black-armed general. Instead, it was a glittering gold pack with a huge X5 lettering floating above its head. A super experience pack. What's so special about a mere admiral? What if I contradict Marshal Kong in front of him? What if you question the world government's justice in front of the 5 elders? What if I beat up a celestial dragon? That reward, wouldn't it be off the charts? Navy King. No, that's too narrow-minded. I will be the only king on this vast ocean. Kane. Seeing that Kane showed no remorse after being scolded, but instead had a gleam in his eyes and even a suspicious smirk at the corner of his mouth, Zephyr's anger flared even more. It seems you have a lot of opinions about what I said. No. Report to the chief instructor. Kane immediately composed himself, stood up straight with a snap, and his face instantly switched to an expression of utmost sincerity and remorse. I am ashamed of my behavior. It was your teachings that made me realize my mistake. I am heartbroken that I have tarnished my father's honor. His voice was strong and clear, and his eyes were as clear as a saint's, as if he were about to commit seppuku at any moment. This was a flawless performance worthy of an Oscar, so good that the veins on Zephyr's face twitched. Ding! Host's words have been detected as extremely hypocritical, causing Zephyr slight physical discomfort. Disciplinary points added, +50. Humph! Zephyr snorted coldly, not wanting to waste any more words with him. Ceremony over. Everyone, begin the physical fitness test immediately. Run 10 laps around Marineford with a 500-kilogram weight. The last 10 will be eliminated. Yes, all the new recruits roared in unison. Zephyr's gaze locked onto Kane again, with a stern, scrutinizing look. You're carrying 1,000 kilograms. I hope your abilities match your laid-back attitude. Kane's face immediately contorted into a tragic expression, as if the sky had fallen, while inwardly he was screaming. System, give me some points. Please select the area to enhance. Physique, physical skill, fruit. Physique. Consumes 50 disciplinary points. Increases physique by 1. Current physique, 49. As soon as he finished speaking, a warm current surged from his heart and flowed throughout his body. Kane could feel every muscle in his body cheering and becoming stronger and more elastic at an incredible speed. The last trace of drowsiness left from the time travel was completely swept away. This instantaneous enhancement surpassed the original owner's arduous training over the past few months. Cold. Kane slowly exhaled a breath of stale air, feeling an unprecedented surge of power within his body, and a confident smile unconsciously appeared on his lips. Teacher Zephyr, don't underestimate me. Chapter 2, Zephyr, is this kid acting against me? At Zephyr's command, hundreds of elite naval recruits charged out. For justice. The slogans were deafening, full of youthful vigor and passion. The heavy footsteps made the ground tremble slightly. Running at the forefront were 3 monstrous figures. Sakazuki took the lead, his steps as steady as a mountain, even with a mountain of iron on his back. Borsellino, with his hands in his pockets, appeared to be moving slowly, yet strangely remained beside Sakazuki with a lewd and irritating expression. Cusin followed silently behind the two, his eyes focused and his breathing steady. About 50 meters behind them was Kane, who was gritting his teeth. Damn, these guys. They're monsters. Kane's newly enhanced physique allowed him to barely keep up with the three people ahead of him. But the weight of 1,000 kilograms was frantically draining his every bit of strength, and his calf muscles had begun to twitch. He could clearly feel that the sharp gaze from the platform was fixed on him. Zephyr was observing him, scrutinizing him, and perhaps even waiting to see when he would fall. No, I absolutely cannot fall here. Kane bit his tongue, using the pain to stimulate his dwindling nerves. I'm going to be the man who becomes the king of the Navy. He stared intently at Sakazuki's straight back, squeezing out every last bit of strength from his body. 1 lap. 2 laps. As the team entered the 4th lap, Kane's speed visibly slowed down, causing him to slip out of the pack and be overtaken by more and more people. My steps were unsteady, my consciousness began to blur, and every step felt like I was about to kneel down. I'm about to reach my limit. In this high-level game, am I going to be eliminated right at the start? Just as he was on the verge of his limit, a muffled thud came from his side. After one trainee's eyes rolled back, foaming at the mouth, and he fell straight to the ground under the heavy load. The surrounding trainees glanced at it briefly before immediately looking away, gritting their teeth and continuing to run forward. Ignore him. This is the selection process for the elite camp. Stop and you'll be eliminated. Naval training is brutal. Survival of the fittest is the only rule here. On the high platform, Zephyr's eyes, behind his sunglasses, coldly observed everything. This is the Navy. This is the Grand Line, where harsh reality will weed out all those who are not qualified. If you can't even endure this little bit of hardship, going to the new world will only be a death sentence. However, a figure suddenly braked, kicking up a cloud of dust. It's Kane. His eyes lit up instantly as he looked at the fallen recruit. Under the gaze of hundreds of eyes, he stopped beside the unconscious student, squatted down, untied the student's weighted vest, and then pinched his philtrum. Hey, wake up, you idiot. Kane's voice was loud and clear, filled with anxiety and concern. Think of your family. Think of your oath when you join the Navy. Are you really going to fall here like a coward? His voice echoed across the training field, causing many trainees who were focused on running to subconsciously slow down and cast complicated glances at him. Sakazuki, at the very front of the group, paused almost imperceptibly, glanced back, and frowned even more deeply. Idiot. Page 3. Borsellino adjusted his sunglasses, the playful smile on his lips widening. Oh my, this is truly an extraordinary newcomer. Cusin frowned deeply, a hint of struggle and reluctance flashing in his eyes, but in the end he clenched his fists and chose to continue forward. On the high platform, Zephyr's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Kine. He gripped the railing, roaring angrily. What are you doing? Who gave you permission to stop? Do you want to be eliminated along with him? Kane seemed not to hear Zeph's roar. Seeing that the student slowly woke up, he immediately put his water bottle into the other person's hand. Drink it. Then stand up. The student was bewildered by Kane's actions, but looking into Kane's sincere and ardent eyes, a surge of passion rushed to his head. He grabbed the water bottle and gulped down several mouthfuls, then roared as he struggled to his feet from the ground. And at that very moment, a system notification sounded in Kane's mind. Ding. Host misconduct detected. blatantly defying the training camp's ironclad rules and disrupting the testing order. Base score 120. Initiating impact coefficient detection. Triggered witness factor. Witness, Zephyr, Admiral class. Disciplinary points gained x5. Witnesses, Sakazuki, Borsellino, Cusin, potential future Admiral level. Coefficient increased by 3. Eyewitness accounts. Large numbers of senior officers and elite recruits. Coefficient increased by 1.5. Final settlement. Congratulations, host. You have obtained 2,700 disciplinary points. It's out. Kane was overjoyed, but on the surface, he appeared dignified and righteous. He helped the cadet up, then turned around abruptly and gave a perfect military salute to Zephyr on the high platform. Reporting, Chief Instructor. I cannot ignore my comrades who are about to fall behind. Because we are the Navy. Behind us are hundreds of millions of civilians who need protection. If we can easily abandon even our closest companions, how can we talk about protecting this world? This is my justice. His impassioned declaration of justice completely changed the way the surrounding trainees looked at Kane. From initial incomprehension and mockery, it gradually turned into shock and even a touch of admiration. Zephyr, standing on the high platform, was speechless for a long time after being confronted by Kane's words, his chest heaving violently. Abandon your companions. This is definitely not something the Navy should be doing. But this is a selection test. Damn it. Zephyr felt his fist harden and his temples throbbed. Kane, the instigator, maintained that tragic expression of for justice, even after shouting those words, while inside he was roaring wildly. System, give me some points. All of them to physique. Order received. Physical enhancement in progress. Consumes 100 disciplinary points. Physique +1, current physique 50. Consumes 200 disciplinary points. Physique +1, current physique 51. Hey, wait a minute. Kane was taken aback. System, what's going on? Why are skill points more expensive now? The higher the attribute value, the more energy is required to upgrade it. It turned out to be the case. Kane instantly understood. This made perfect sense. Otherwise, if he kept adding points indefinitely, wouldn't he be able to punch Kaido tomorrow and kick him the day after? Keep adding. Keep adding until you can't add any more. Physical enhancement in progress. Consumes 600 disciplinary points. Physique +1, current physique 55. Disciplinary value balance 630. Boom. A warm current, dozens of times stronger than before, instantly swept through my entire body. If the previous enhancements were just a trickle, then this time it's a raging torrent. He even had the illusion that he could kill a Sea King with a single punch. Kane turned around and gave the still bewildered student a bright, almost blindingly sunny smile. Keep up. Don't fall behind. After saying that, to everyone's astonishment, Kane slammed his legs into the ground. Boom! A terrifying muffled thud. The hard rock beneath Kane's feet instantly cracked, blasting out a spiderweb-like crater 2 meters in diameter. The next second, his figure instantly transformed into a golden lightning bolt, leaving a long afterimage as he shot out. Because of its speed, it even stirred up a gust of wind, causing the surrounding recruits to stagger and fall. What? Zephyr, standing on the high platform, nearly had his sunglasses slip off. That explosive power. How could a recruit possibly possess it? Has this kid been hiding his true strength all along? All the new recruits stared wide-eyed at the golden afterimage, dumbfounded. Okay. So fast. Are you kidding me? Wasn't he almost at his limit? He's carrying 1,000 kilograms of weight on his back. Hey, speed up, speed up, speed up again. Amidst hundreds of ghostly gazes, Kane's figure continuously surpassed one recruit after another. Only half a circle. Kane is already close to the top tier. Ha! Cusin, who was maintaining his own rhythm, suddenly felt a gust of wind sweep past him. He turned his head sharply, only to see a golden figure flash by and instantly leave him more than 10 meters behind. Oh my! This amazing explosive power. Is it shave? No. This is pure physical strength. Borsellino's eyes, hidden behind his sunglasses, snapped open, abandoning his languid demeanor and replaced by an unprecedented seriousness. That's truly remarkable. This speed is already on par with that of officers from headquarters, isn't it? Sakazuki, at the very front, felt the hurricane sweep past his side, and the cigar in his mouth fell to the ground with a thud. He stared at the golden figure that had left him far behind, his eyes filled with disbelief and shock. That guy he called an idiot possesses even more terrifying physical abilities than him. Impossible. Under the watchful eyes of the entire stadium, Kane crossed the finish line. He stopped in front of Zephyr's platform and slowly lowered his weighted vest. Boom! Eh, eh. The deafening sound of 1,000 kilograms of steel crashing to the ground struck everyone's heart. Kane's breathing was slightly rapid, and he was steaming with heat, but his back remained ramrod straight. He raised his head, looked at Chief Instructor Zephyr, whose expression was constantly changing, straightened his still disheveled collar, snapped to attention, and gave an impeccable naval salute. Then he flashed an incredibly sunny, sincere, and radiant smile. Reporting, Chief Instructor. Trainee Kane has successfully completed the test. Everything for justice. The audience was silent. Zephyr's lips twitched wildly as he looked at the blond boy standing in the sunlight, his face practically screaming, "I need praise." He had a premonition. This year's elite training camp is likely to be in turmoil. Chapter 3, Cusin. You don't want justice to be just empty talk, do you? Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, it's been a hellish week. The sea breeze in Marineford still carried a salty smell, but the atmosphere at the elite training camp had undergone some subtle changes. Kane's performance was impeccable, marked by daily physical training, 6 styles practice, and combat drills. He even shows a tendency to surpass Sakazuki and others in several events that are purely about strength and speed. He humbly accepted the instructor's reprimands, his sincere attitude leaving no room for criticism. Page 4. In the eyes of the new recruits, he was a strong, helpful, and reliable older brother. In Zephyr's eyes, although this kid was sometimes too eager to show off, he had to admit that he was a rare and promising talent. However, only Kane himself knew how miserable he had been for the past week. Late at night, in the naval dormitory, Kane lay sprawled on the hard bed, staring at the blue light screen that only he could see, his face looking worse than if he had eaten a bitter melon. Ding! 1 minute late for training assembly. Disciplinary violation, value +1. Ding! You asked for an extra spoonful of braised pork when getting your food from the cafeteria. Disciplinary points +2. Ding! Reading erotic novels after lights out, violation points +2. Current violation value, 642. What about playing? Kane ruffled his blonde hair in frustration, internally roaring. How long will it take to get the rumble fruit? By the time Luffy sets sail, I'll still be saving up for Conqueror's Haki. His current physique is 55 points. To increase it by 1 point, he would need a full 700 points of disciplinary value. Such petty theft and thievery is simply a drop in the ocean. No, we have to pull off a big one. Kane sat up abruptly, his eyes fixed on the dark night outside the window. A plan quietly took shape in Kane's mind. If someone violates the rules, they will be put in solitary confinement or beaten by the law enforcement. In more serious cases, they could be discharged from the military and kicked out immediately. But what if I drag all of the future top naval forces into the water? As the saying goes, the law does not punish the masses. As long as I drag all the future candidates for Admiral and Marshal into the water, at that time, let alone Zephyr, even if Marshal Kong came, what could he do when he saw this group of promising future pillars of society? Punish me. Wouldn't that make him seem unfair? Punish them all. What about the future of the Navy? This situation is unsolvable. Kane rubbed his hands together excitedly and began looking for his first victim. No, a partner. Sakazuki. Forget it, that guy's too stubborn. Trying to drag him down with him is too difficult. Borsellino. That old fox is too shrewd. My little trick might just be turned on him and become his source of amusement. Therefore, there is only one answer. Kane's gaze fell on the bunk diagonally opposite, which was empty. Kyuzen. The future Aokiji, the current hot-blooded idiot. This is simply a rough gem, requiring only a little guidance from his life mentor to unleash. A different kind of brilliance. The sea breeze howled over the training ground late at night. Drink. Hi. Kyuzen, shirtless, sweat dripping down his muscular physique, was furiously pounding the sandbag. Not enough, not strong enough. How can I uphold burning justice if I don't become stronger? Kyuzen, who was only in his early 20s, had his mind filled with lines from shonen manga protagonists. Just then, a bottle of chilled sports drink was placed on his face. Who would? Kyuzen turned around abruptly and saw a face that looked exceptionally holy in the moonlight. Still training so late, Kyuzen, you really are the hardest working among us. Kane held 2 towels in his hands, his smile as warm as that of a friendly older brother next door. Oh, it's Kane. Kyuzen's tense nerves relaxed, and he took the drink and gulped down a large mouthful. You weren't asleep either, were you? I can't sleep. Kane sighed, his sunny expression instantly switching to a deep, worried mode. He walked to the breakwater at the edge of the training ground and sat down, gazing at the brightly lit Sabyodi archipelago in the distance, though he couldn't see it at all, his back looking incredibly lonely. Kyuzen, I've been thinking about a question. What's the problem? The naive Kyuzen immediately followed and sat down next to him. Kane turned his head, his azure eyes looking directly at Kyuzen. What is the purpose of all this training? Of course, it's for justice, Kyuzen answered without hesitation, to capture pirates and protect civilians. A perfect answer. Kane gave a bitter smile and shook his head. But Kyuzen, have you ever seen real civilians? Do you understand their true suffering? Kyuzen was stunned. This. We stay in Marineford, which is paradise, an ivory tower. The food, clothing, and other necessities we have are the best provided by the world government. Kane stood up, his voice gradually becoming more impassioned, with the persuasive quality of a pyramid scheme strategist. Textbooks say that justice is about eliminating pirates. But textbooks don't tell us why ordinary people become pirates. They didn't tell us what kind of wretched struggles people made for survival in those sunless corners. If you have never seen darkness, how can you understand the preciousness of light? If you haven't been deep in the mire, how can you have the right to say you want to pull the world out of it? A barrage of questions left the young Cusan completely bewildered. He opened his mouth wide, feeling as if his soul had been cleansed like never before. Yes, they shout about justice every day, but they've never even seen the real suffering of ordinary people. Isn't that hypocrisy? Kane, Cusan's eyes changed, filled with a yearning for truth. Then what should I do? They've taken the bait. Kane was practically bursting with laughter inside, but outwardly he reached out and placed a heavy hand on Cusan's shoulder, his gaze unwavering. Reading 10,000 books is not as good as traveling 10,000 miles. Tonight, I'll take you somewhere. That place is the abyss of desire, the testing ground of humanity, and also the place where you can see the true nature of this world. Only by withstanding the test, there can your sense of justice transform from a boy into a man. Cusan was fired up by what he heard and clenched his fist. You mean we're going to leave the base? This is a necessary sacrifice, Kane declared with righteous indignation. What does it matter to break a few outdated rules for the sake of true justice? If Professor Zeff knew, he would definitely understand our good intentions. Kane's inner thoughts, he'd break your legs. After a fierce internal struggle, the simple-minded Cusan finally nodded with a firm look in his eyes. You're right, Kane. My sense of justice is too superficial. Take me with you. I want to see the real world. Become. A future big shot will fall into the trap. Ding. Extremely egregious instigation. Behavior detected in the host. Target, Cusan, future Admiral. Nature of the act, using the guise of justice, luring a naive colleague to a pleasure district. Disciplinary, value plus 100. Hearing the system's pleasant notification sound, Kane felt every pore on his body relax. Brothers. Kane grabbed Cusan's neck, lowered his voice, and gave him a strange smile that all men understand. Cusan thought it was a smile of revolutionary friendship. Go change into civilian clothes. Meet me in 10 minutes at Warehouse No. 3 in the logistics area. That was the weakest point in the island's defenses. We climbed over there and took a smuggling boat to the Sabyori archipelago. Tonight, your brother will take you to. No, to experience the lives of ordinary people. Cusan nodded emphatically, his eyes gleaming with a light of self-sacrifice for justice. Yes. Understand the people's plight. Watching Cusan scurry off to change his clothes, Kane, standing in the shadows, finally couldn't help but let out a low chuckle. Cusan, please don't blame me. The older women in Huanal Street are very good at educating people. After this night, your disciplinary record. Oh no, your life experience will definitely be very rich. Kane straightened his collar, glanced at the preloaded reward notifications on the system panel, and walked contentedly into the darkness. Justice. Page 5. Of course, we must stick to it. But before that, let me exchange your integrity for some attribute points. Chapter 4. Is this the suffering of humankind? At 1 o'clock in the morning, people and horses are exhausted. In the shadows of the headquarters logistics area, two figures moved swiftly along the wall like geckos. Kane. Those are special ships used to transport supplies to the celestial dragons, right? Cusan lowered his voice, his tall frame huddled in the shadows of the container as much as possible, his voice trembling slightly. Although he was very powerful, this was, after all, the first time in his life that he had violated military discipline. And they were on a celestial dragon's supply ship. If they were discovered, they would face a military court-martial. In contrast, Kane, who was walking ahead, moved with light steps and a relaxed posture, even casually adjusting the collar of his flashy casual clothes. Open up new possibilities, Cusan. Without turning his head, Kane said in a whisper that only the two of them could hear, "We are here to explore the true meaning of justice and are borrowing the ships of the powerful. This is called taking from the people and using it for the people." Is that so? Cusin felt something was off, but then thought Kane's words made a lot of sense. SHH, don't talk, the patrol's gone, jump. With Kane's command, the two men, under the cover of night, silently landed on the deck of the supply ship that was about to set sail, and rolled into the cargo hold filled with luxury goods. Ding! Host misconduct detected. Action, leaving the island without permission and boarding a vessel specially provided by the Celestial Dragons. Eyewitnesses, none, because your infiltration was too perfect. Disciplinary, value plus 200. Kane hid among the piles of expensive silk, listening to the pleasant system notification sound, a satisfied smile curving his lips. I made 200 just by stepping out the door. Tonight's study trip is destined to be a huge success. 2 hours later. Sabjodi Archipelago, the end of the first half of the Grand Line, and also the only way to the New World. Unlike the solemn and oppressive naval headquarters, the Sabjodi Archipelago, especially the lawless zone, is just beginning to awaken at night. The roots of the enormous Yarchaman mangrove are intertwined, and countless colorful soap bubbles slowly rise into the air under the illumination of neon lights, reflecting a mesmerizing and decadent radiance. Cusin changed into an inconspicuous grey hoodie and put on a hood, looking at the scene in shock, like a country bumpkin visiting a grand garden. Casinos, black markets, and taverns lined both sides of the street. The air was filled with a sweet, cloying smell of alcohol, perfume, grilled meat, and some kind of unknown tobacco. There were no orderly cues, no resounding slogans. All that could be found were drunken pirates, heavily made-up prostitutes, sinister-looking human traffickers, and screams and pleas for mercy coming from the dark alleyways. This is, Cusin's pupils contracted slightly. He had never seen such a chaotic scene before, and he felt his sense of justice was being challenged. This is the real ocean, Cusin. Kane stood with his hands in his pockets, his floral shirt making him blend perfectly into the environment. He stood under a huge neon sign, half his face hidden in shadow, his voice deep and magnetic. At headquarters, we see order. But here, chaos is the only order. Kane pointed to a down-on-his-luck middle-aged man being beaten not far away, and then to the crowd of onlookers who were even cheering. See, this is called numbness. When survival becomes the only purpose, morality becomes a luxury. Cusin clenched his fist, a flash of anger in his eyes. In that case, we should. What should we do? Rush up and arrest the assailant. Kane interrupted him, shook his head, and looked at him with a hint of pity that said, "You're still too young. You've caught one, but there are still 10 more. Can you catch all the evil on this island? You must learn to see through appearances to the essence. Why is there chaos? Because of suffering. Why is there suffering? Because of desire." Kane turned around and pointed to the area ahead where the lights were brightest and the music was deafening. Area 20 of the Sabjodi Archipelago, also known as the city that never sleeps. To truly understand this pain, we must venture into the lion's den. Kane grabbed Cusin's stiff shoulder and pointed to the giant entertainment club called Sea Sweetheart. 2 rows of young women dressed in revealing bunny girl outfits stood at the entrance, enthusiastically soliciting customers. Their white thighs shimmered under the lights, making people dizzy. Let's go, Cusin. Let's confront the most primal vortex of human desire. How? How? Where are we going? Cusin's mind went blank. His tongue was tied in knots, and his cheeks began to burn uncontrollably. Of course. Kane's expression was serious. This is where humanity is most authentic. The sailor's sweat, tears, desires, and emptiness all intertwine here. How can you understand why they would rather spend their hard-earned money here than send it back to their hometown without experiencing it firsthand? This. Looking at Cusan's conflicted and confused expression, Kane put his arm around Cusan's shoulder, his voice filled with sorrow. Go, Cusan. Don't let worldly prejudices hold you back in your quest for truth. Today, let us join together, for the sake of true justice, and plunge into this ocean of suffering. After saying that, he half pushed and half shoved the tall Cusan towards the door leading to the new world. Cusan was being pushed along, staggering, his mind a complete mess. Kane, however, was secretly overjoyed. Ding! Detected that the host has led a future general into the entertainment street area. Nature of the act, extremely egregious. It severely corrupts the pure hearts of the Navy's pillars. Level of subversion, high. Calculating the reward based on the area of Cusan's psychological trauma. Kane forced a smile, his expression growing increasingly sorrowful and compassionate. While pushing Cusan, he was still trying to persuade him to change his mindset. Cusan, remember, tonight we are not Navy, but two lost lambs. We must listen to the groans of this world with the utmost humility. Cusan was completely bewildered and could only nod mechanically. As soon as the two stepped through the gate, a wave of heat hit them. The heavy metal music made people's hearts pound, and in the center of the dance floor, countless men and women were wildly twisting their bodies. Cusan stared at the crowd twirling wildly in the dance floor, at the scantily clad dancers, at the sailors with flushed faces loudly playing drinking games, and froze on the spot. Is this the suffering of humanity that Kane spoke of? Why do they look like? You look very happy. Chapter 5, Cusan is numb. So this is what adult justice is. Cusan stood at the doorway, his towering figure of over 2 meters tall, coupled with his innocent, virgin-like, awkward expression, immediately attracting a lot of attention. Wow, young man, you're really handsome. A dancer wearing fishnet stockings, and with skull and rose tattoos on her arms, swayed her hips as she approached, her warm, soft body pressing directly against Cusan's stiff arm. Is this your first time in a place like this? She held a slender cigarette between her fingers, casually exhaled a smoke ring at Cusan, and then casually hooked her finger under Cusan's chin. You're so strong. Do you want me to play with you? I'll teach you how to have fun. Cusan's body froze completely, and a surge of heat rushed to his head. No, no need. Cusan's lips trembled as he tried to pull his arms away, but the dancer held on tightly, the soft touch leaving his mind blank. We came, too. Coming here to experience the hardships of life. Kane's voice came from behind Cusan, loud and bold. He stepped forward, naturally blocking Cusan's path, and casually put his arm around the dancer's waist. He leaned close to her ear and whispered a few words in a deep, magnetic voice. The dancer paused for a moment, then let out a string of silvery laughter, collapsing into Kane's arms, her body trembling with delight. Oh dear, you're so naughty, but I love it so much. Cusan. Before Cusan could react, Kane had already dragged him through the crowded throng and plopped him down at the most conspicuous bar counter. 2 deep-sea bombs. The kind that can be set on fire. Kane casually pulled a wad of pewter from his pocket and slapped it onto the bar. The dancer casually sat on Kane's lap, her slender arms hooking around his neck, her breath sweet as orchids. Young man, looks like this isn't your first time here. Beautiful lady, please don't misunderstand. Kane remained calm and composed, his eyes as deep as a still pool. He looked at the dancer, then glanced at Cusin, whose worldview had been completely shattered. Page 6. The hardships of life are always similar. I just borne this burden earlier than my friends. The dancer didn't understand, but thought it sounded really impressive. Cusin watched the dancer giggle in Kane's arms, then glanced at the two amber-colored glasses of spirits the bartender had brought over. The liquid still had a cluster of eerie blue flames floating on it, clearly indicating an alarmingly high alcohol content. His Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice trembled slightly. Kane. Kane, this isn't right, is it? We didn't come here to. Shallow. Kane shook his head in anguish, pointing to the glass of strong liquor that had just been served, its surface gleaming with blue flames. Cusin, do you think they're drinking alcohol? What they drink is homesickness, the loneliness of not being able to reunite with their families. Every sip is a burning, longing in their hearts. Kane pointed to the drunken crowd around him. Why are they laughing? Because if they don't laugh, the weight of reality will make them cry. This helplessness of drowning sorrows in alcohol, this bleak forced smile, how can you understand it if you don't drink it all up? These words, coupled with Kane's compassionate expression, left the bartender, who was wiping glasses, completely dumbfounded. The bartender froze in midair, staring at the bottle in his hand, lost in deep self-doubt. Am I really selling something this profound? I always thought I was selling watered-down fake liquor. The simple-minded Cusin was even more deeply shocked. Oh, I see. I was oversimplifying things. I understand. Cusin gritted his teeth, picked up the still-burning glass of liquor, and his eyes blazed with fury. For justice. He suddenly tilted his head back and drank it all in one gulp. Cough. Cough, cough, cough. The spicy liquor burned his throat all the way to his stomach, and Cusin's face instantly turned a deep liver color, tears streaming down his face as he coughed. Cough, cough, cough. It's so spicy. Can you feel it? Kane leaned closer, his expression concerned, but his hands were not idle. He skillfully pinched the dancer's waist, enjoying the small amount of disciplinary value +1 that kept popping up from the system. Cusin coughed violently while nodding frantically. He could definitely feel it. He felt like his internal organs were about to be burned through. Is this the suffering of people at the bottom of society? That's terrifying. Kane looked at Cusin's miserable state, inwardly laughing his head off, but his face was filled with sorrow. He picked up his glass, took an elegant sip, and let the rich aroma of the wine fill his mouth. Young man, since you're in so much pain, how about I help you and ease some of it? The dancer who had been sitting on Kane's lap waved with a grin, and another red-haired dancer, dressed even more scantily, immediately came over, winked at Cusin, and reached out to wipe the wine stains from the corner of his mouth. Cusin shuddered in fright and waved his hands repeatedly. No need, I can still hold on. Cusin, don't refuse. Kane spoke at the opportune moment, his tone serious. Look how kind this young lady is, willing to help us. This is their professional ethics and their way of surviving in this cruel world. By refusing her, you are denying her value in life. Is this your idea of justice? How? This, Cusin was completely confused. Open your heart, Cusin. Only through deep communication can you truly understand. And so, the next half hour was a complete collapse and reshaping of Cusin's worldview. He watched Kane move with the ease of a socialite on the dance floor. One moment he's befriending a burly pirate, uncovering several black market locations. The next he's discussing the origin of life with a heavily made-up prostitute, making the girls swoon. The most outrageous thing is that this guy even went to the gambling table and played a few rounds, winning a huge amount of money. Then, with a pained expression, he said to the gamblers who were blinded by their losses, "Money is the root of all evil. I took it away to purify your souls." Cusin huddled in a corner, clutching an empty wine glass, surrounded by two dancers who wanted to grope him. He felt like a husky that had wandered into a pack of wolves, weak, pitiful, and helpless. At that moment, Kane glanced at the wall clock. 4 o'clock in the morning. The time is almost right. Kane made an excuse to pee and slipped away to the back alley. He took a deep breath, calmed himself down, took out a den mushy from his pocket, and skillfully dialed a number. Brabra brabru, brabra brabru. Chapter 6. Reporting himself backfires. Teacher, Zephyr, kicks down the door himself. Crack. The den mushy mimicked a serious face, and a steady voice rang out. Naval Headquarters Night Duty Room. Kane immediately pinched his nose and shouted in a high-pitched voice, "Report, report. I am a concerned citizen of Marineford. I have seen something incredible. Please say." I saw 2 cadets from the elite naval training camp. Right there in that, see Sweetheart Place, the biggest kiln. Cough, cough, the red light district. Kane's voice was extremely exaggerated. They were having a blast inside, with women on both sides. That big guy was completely drunk, and even said that naval discipline is nothing. It's utterly morally bankrupt, and ruins the reputation of the Navy. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the phone, as if they were stunned by the explosive news. Are you sure you're a student from the elite training camp? It's true. A tall, curly-haired guy, and a really handsome blonde kid. Kane betrayed himself and Cusin without hesitation. If you don't come soon, the Navy will lose all face. I heard that Admiral Zephyr is extremely strict about discipline, and if he finds out about this. What would happen if we found out? A cold and angry voice suddenly came from the den mushy. That sound. Kane's smile froze. Oh no. It's Zephyr himself. He's actually on night duty in the room tonight. Ah, I see. He'll be very pleased because he has such responsible citizens supervising him. Kane's mind raced as he tried to smooth things over. Is it? Zephyr showed no emotional fluctuation, but Kane sensed a terrifying aura. This helpful citizen, your voice sounds very familiar. I also remember the one you mentioned, a really handsome blonde guy. Beep and beep, beep. Click. The den mushy was disconnected. Kane held the sleeping den mushy, a bead of cold sweat beading on his forehead, but a wild grin spread across his face. They went too far. But this is what you call exciting. Kane's eyes lit up again. With Zephyr personally making the arrest, the witness coefficient is absolutely off the charts. This disciplinary penalty is likely to skyrocket. He quickly adjusted his mindset, put on his compassionate expression again, and walked back to the tavern as if nothing had happened. I had only been sitting down for less than 10 minutes. Seeing Cusin's desperate expression as he was cornered by the red-haired dancer, I realized. Sudden. Boom. A loud bang. The 2 thick oak doors of See Sweetheart, along with half a wall, instantly turned into a shower of wood chips that shot out in all directions. The terrifying shockwave sent several bodyguards flying from the doorway. The entire venue fell silent instantly. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared in horror at the doorway. Amidst the billowing dust, a towering figure stood against the light. His short, purple hair stood on end, like a lion with its mane bristling. Black armament hacky, like flames, coiled around his thick arms, radiating a suffocating sense of oppression. Admiral Black Arm, Zephyr of the Navy headquarters. Zephyr's gaze swept across the entire room in an instant, accurately locking onto two figures sitting at the bar. When he saw the blonde boy holding a drink with a dancer beside him, and even a hint of undisguised enjoyment on his face, Zephyr felt his blood rush to his head. That bastard. He was the one who acted mysteriously and reported me on the phone just now. Two figures appeared beside Zephyr. A tall, thin man wearing sunglasses adjusted his glasses, a lewd smile playing on his lips, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Oh my gosh, Tilda, Professor Zephyr is getting serious. Tilda, how terrifying, Tilda. A man with a cigar in his mouth, a face as cold and stern as a rock, and dressed in a dark red suit, looked at the lewd scene before him with brows furrowed so deeply they could crush a seagull. Borsellino. Sakazuki. The three future generals are all here. Clap. Page 7. Cusin dropped the wine glass in his hand and shattered it on the ground. His face turned deathly pale in an instant, devoid of any color. Zephyr, teacher. It's over. Life has come to an end. However, amidst this tense atmosphere, a series of system notifications, as melodious as heavenly music, rang in Kane's mind. Ding! Multiple violations detected against the host. Leaving camp without permission, base score +80. Visit the red light district and engage in lavish activities, base score +100. Corrupting the future core combat force of the Navy, Cusin, base score +200. Deceived a Marine Admiral, base score +250. Total base score, 630 points. Triggered witness factor. Witness, Zephyr, Admiral class. Disciplinary points, gained X5. Witnesses, Borsellino, Sakazuki, potential future Admiral level. Coefficient, increased by 3. Triggered the disruptive factor. Description of behavior, distorting the worldview of a future Admiral. This behavior severely impacts the Navy's traditional values and overturns the established image of elite cadets. Disruptiveness rating, X5. Final settlement in progress. Coefficients exploding due to accumulation. Congratulations, host. You have gained a total of 47,250 disciplinary points this time. Disciplinary value balance, 48,192. Boom! Looking at the glittering 5-digit number on the retinal screen, Kane felt so happy he was about to faint. It's out. This time it really worked. Before he could recover from his ecstasy, a roar like thunder shattered all the surrounding glasses. Kane. Cusin. You two bastards. Get out here. Chapter 7. That night, Cusin lost his dream. Half an hour later, in the head instructor's office at the Navy headquarters, elite training camp, the atmosphere was so oppressive it was hard to breathe. Beneath the horizontal plaque bearing the word justice on the wall, Zephyr sat behind his large desk. His imposing face was now as black as iron, and the veins on his forehead throbbed as if they might burst at any moment. In the center of the office, Kane and Cusin stood side by side as punishment, their heads drooping so low they were almost buried in their chests. Cusin's 2-meter-tall frame was trembling slightly, cold sweat dripping from his curly hair onto the floor. Only 3 words were endlessly repeating in his mind. That's it. The egg is dead. Not only did he leave the island without permission and go to a place like that, but he was also caught red-handed by Professor Zephyr. Is his naval career going to end before it even begins? Compared to Cusin's chaos and despair, Kane, standing beside him, also had his head down, and his shoulders were even trembling violently, looking as if he was filled with extreme remorse. But in fact, Kane was biting his cheek hard, using the pain to prevent himself from laughing out loud. On his retina, the Azure Blue System screen was frantically scrolling. Discipline points settled. Current disciplinary points balance 48,192. I'm rich. This is enough to make me financially independent. Should I save up 50,000 and go all in on the lottery for a rare beast? Or should I max out all 6 techniques and become a monster in physical combat? I'm so conflicted. Is this the dilemma of the rich? Thump! With a loud bang, Zephyr's iron fist slammed into the solid wood desk, instantly cracking the hard surface and sending wood chips flying. Kane's ecstasy was interrupted, but he immediately adjusted his micro-expressions, instantly switching to heartbroken mode. Say! Zephyr's roar made the glass windows vibrate. These are the future pillars I've been eyeing. These are the best newcomers of this year. Going to the red light district. Drinking and carousing. Why don't you just become pirates? Hell. Spit almost landed on their faces. Cusan's knees buckled, his face turned pale, and he opened his mouth to admit his mistake. Teacher, I. However, another figure was faster than him. After a dull but resolute thud of a knee hitting the ground rang out. Kane knelt down without warning, his back straight, his azure eyes staring directly at the enraged Zephyr. Reporting to Professor Zephyr. It's all my fault. I did it all by myself. It has nothing to do with Cusan. His voice was loud and clear, resounding and firm. Cusan turned his head sharply, looking at Kane beside him in disbelief. What is he doing? We went together. Why is he carrying this burden alone? Why? Zephyr stared intently at him, his teeth grinding together. Give me a reason. Kane, is this how you trample on the glory your father earned with his life? No. Kane's body jolted when his father was mentioned. He slowly raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed, and 2 lines of clear tears slid down his cheeks at just the right moment. At this moment, I felt like I was possessed by an Oscar-winning actor. Teacher, it was precisely to live up to my father's honor, and for the sake of the Navy's justice, that I did such a despicable thing. Zephyr was taken aback, his brows furrowed, and confusion showed in his eyes. Kane's voice trembled slightly with excitement. Cusan is too naive. He only sees black and white. He's like a blank sheet of paper, completely unaware of the filth in this world. But teacher, you know better than anyone that this ocean isn't black and white. The new world we're going to is full of deceit, desire, and the most extreme evil. I'm worried. I'm really worried that he will run into obstacles everywhere on the cruel sea because of this overly idealistic sense of justice, and even take an extreme path. So, he clenched his fist and pounded it heavily on his chest. That's why I wanted to use this most extreme method to let him see the filth of this world in advance. I want him to understand how much helplessness is hidden beneath the peace we risk our lives to protect. Even if it violates military discipline. Even if it stains my record. Even if I get discharged. As long as Cusan can see the cruelty of this world beforehand, and his path to justice will be more stable. I, Kane, am willing to be punished. I will die without regret. After saying this, Kane slammed his head down again, his forehead hitting the floor with a crisp sound. Please, teacher, punish only me. The entire office was completely silent. Cusan was completely stunned. His worldview had collapsed for the second time tonight. So, that's how it is. In an instant, Cusan's heart was overwhelmed by a complex emotion. Zephyr's chest heaved violently. He looked at the boy kneeling on the ground, at his straight spine, and it was as if he saw the figure of his former comrade-in-arms. This kid, although his actions are absurd, his original intention was actually to protect his comrades. Zephyr's heart, which had grown cold due to the tragic deaths of his family, was deeply touched. Cold. Zephyr let out a long breath, the anger in his eyes dissipating considerably, replaced by a complex expression. What a fine example of no regrets even in death. Zephyr sat down again, his tone still stern, but the murderous intent was gone. Although your intentions are for the sake of your comrades, military discipline is military discipline. Since you want to bear everything, then I'll grant your wish. Page 8. Zephyr waved his hand. You two bastards, get to the training ground now. Run 2,000 laps around Marineford with 2,000 kilograms of weight. If you don't finish, neither of you will get any sleep tonight. Yes, teacher. Thank you, teacher. Kane, feeling like he'd been granted a pardon, kowtowed deeply again with a face full of gratitude, then grabbed Cusin, who was still in a daze of being moved, and rushed out of the office. Watching the two figures disappear into the distance, Zephyr rubbed his temples wearily, but a barely perceptible smile curved his lips. This batch of newcomers is really a headache. But they're not bad. 5 o'clock in the morning, Marineford training ground. The moonlight was cold and clear, and the sea breeze was biting. Two figures, carrying specially made iron blocks as large as small mountains on their backs, trudged along the track with difficulty. With each step, a heavy thud could be heard. Hoo-kai! Hoo-kai! Cusin felt like his lungs were about to explode. The after-effects of the alcohol, combined with the terrifying weight of 2,000 kilograms, made every step he took feel like torture. Kane, I'm sorry. I dragged you into this. Cusin apologized breathlessly as he ran, his eyes filled with guilt. Kane, who was running ahead of him, was also drenched in sweat, but his eyes were determined. Stop talking nonsense. Cusin, save your energy for running. This is the price of growing up. However, a frantic roar was raging inside. System, give me some points. All in. I want to be a macho man. Instruction received. Disciplinary points being converted. Physical enhancement begins. Physical strength, 55, right arrow 56. Consumed, 700 points. Physical strength, 60, right arrow 61. Consumed, 1,200 points. Boom! As the disciplinary points were depleted like water, a scalding heat suddenly appeared in his body and limbs. The muscle fibers that were originally sore were instantly reorganized and strengthened under the nourishment of this energy. The heavy lead weight suddenly became light. The thrill of pushing his limits almost made Kane groan out loud. Cool. Is this the joy of cheating? Others get more tired the more they run, but I get stronger the more I run. Current physical condition, 65, human limit. Warning, you must master armament haki to break through physical barriers before you can add more points. Entry requirement for a powerful start, 100,000 disciplinary points. Disciplinary value balance, 36,692. 100,000. Kane clicked his tongue, looking at the remaining balance, his eyes becoming even more dangerous. It seems this level isn't enough. We need to do something bigger. Just then, a thump sound came from behind. Cusin finally reached his limit, his eyes rolled back, and he crashed straight onto the track, unconscious. Cusin. Kane stopped in his tracks. He glanced at the figure, watching them intently from the window of the distant office building. and a barely perceptible smile curved his lips. If it's acting, then you have to go all the way. Since we've said we'd bear everything, Kane gritted his teeth, letting out a beast-like growl, then we'll see it through to the end. He walked over to Cusin, grabbed the 2-meter-tall giant with one hand, and hoisted him, lead weight, onto his shoulder. A full 4 tons. That's the weight of an adult. Zephyr, watching this scene from afar, held his teacup in midair, not putting it down for a long time. Boom! Kane bent his knees slightly. The ground cracked, and carrying the weight of 2 people on his back, he took another step. And the speed is even faster than before. Cusin, who was unconscious, vaguely regained consciousness amidst the jolts. He felt himself lying on a broad, warm back, with Kane's heavy but powerful heartbeat in his ears. K.N. Shut up and keep sleeping. Kane breathed heavily, his voice hoarse but strong. I'll run the rest of the way for you. Cusin's eyes welled up with tears. He stared at the swaying ground before him, the words Kane had spoken that evening echoing in his mind, along with the image of Kane running desperately for him. Is this justice? Whether it's going to a place like that, being punished for your teammates, or running all night. It was very exciting and very touching. But I'm so tired. Cusin slowly closed his eyes, and before completely losing consciousness, he uttered a whisper from the depths of his soul. Justice, it's such a hassle. Chapter 8, 50 disciplinary points for one punch. Don't leave. At 7 a.m. In Marineford, the sea fog had not yet dissipated. Kane and Cusin lay in bed for less than 10 minutes. Beep! Zephyr's shrill assembly whistle rang out, instantly shattering the tranquility of the dormitory building. Everyone assemble. Anyone who's late will have to do 10 times the extra training. Zephyr's roar echoed down the corridor. Cusin struggled to get up, instinctively grabbing the navy vest on the headboard, exuding a decadent aura as if he had been ravaged by life. On the other hand, let's look at the other side. Kane slowly straightened his collar. Although his blonde hair looked a little messy, and his clothes were covered with sweat and dust from the previous night, his bright blue eyes were unusually excited. How could I not be excited? That physical enhancement came at the cost of over 10,000 disciplinary points. Now he felt terrifyingly strong. Kane, Cusin, with huge dark circles under his eyes, looked at his energetic roommate in shock. You aren't you tired? You carried me for the last 50 laps. Tired. Kane turned around, facing the rising sun outside the window, and flashed his signature smile. This is youth. Cusin. My body may tire, but as long as I think of the justice we uphold, my spirit is filled with boundless strength. Ding. Host's words have been detected as extremely hypocritical, causing Cusin mild physical discomfort. Disciplinary value plus 20 points. Hearing the pleasant system notification, Kane's smile became even more genuine. Cusin paused, a surge of admiration and shame welling up within him. Is this the difference in awareness? He gritted his teeth and forced himself to get up despite his aching body. 5 minutes later, at the training ground, the students in the elite class lined up. Although they're considered elite, most of them have dark circles under their eyes. Zephyr's roaring last night was so loud that no one in the entire dorm area slept well. Zephyr stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes, hidden behind sunglasses, sweeping across the faces of the crowd before finally settling on Kane. To be honest, Zephyr didn't sleep at all last night. He stood by the office window all night. He witnessed firsthand how Kane shuffled the last 100 laps step by step, and how he carried the unconscious Cusin back to the dormitory. Such perseverance such physique. Zephyr was actually satisfied, even amazed. But this kid really deserves a beating. No physical training today. Zephyr's gruff voice cut through the sea breeze. As elites, physical strength alone is not enough. Today we'll have a real combat sparring session. There are no rules or restrictions. It continues until one side is rendered unable to fight or concedes defeat. Page 9. Divide into pairs and practice freely. Begin. Just as the trainees were preparing to find familiar partners, a deep, hoarse voice rang out. Teacher Zephyr. At the very front of the line, a man wearing a dark red shirt and a baseball cap stepped forward. Sakaski. Even at a young age, the ruthless aura emanating from him was already beginning to take shape. He pulled down the brim of his hat, his sinister eyes scanning over the crowd and fixing on Kane. I request to have sparring practice with Cavalry Kane. The entire room fell silent. Zeph frowned slightly. Sakazuki, Kane was punished last night, and his physical strength is greatly depleted. Is this just an excuse? Sakazuki abruptly interrupted Zephyr, veins bulging on his neck, his tone aggressive. When pirates attack, do you think they'll let you go just because you didn't sleep well last night? The execution of justice knows no time, place, or state. He turned around abruptly and pointed at Kane's nose. I don't approve of this kind of person. He corrupts his colleagues, treats military discipline as a joke, spouts grand theories, but only knows how to pander to the crowd. The Navy doesn't need opportunists like you. If you can't even beat me, get out of the training camp now and don't tarnish your father's reputation. These words were extremely offensive. It was as if Kane's face had been ripped off and thrown on the ground to be trampled on. Cusin, standing nearby, grew anxious and was about to rush forward to argue. Hey, Sakazuki, you've gone too far. One hand steadily stopped Cusin. Kane looked at the spirited Sakazuki and silently prayed. System, evaluate Sakazuki. Scanning for target. Sakazuki, youth. Physique 58, 6 powers. Basic mastery, devil fruit. None haki, not mastered. Kane's pupils contracted slightly as he looked at the numbers on the screen. 58 points. Is this guy a monster? At the opening ceremony a week ago, I beat everyone by increasing my physique to 55. At that time, Sakazuki was close behind, but he clearly had not yet reached the 55 level. In just 1 week, this guy actually managed to raise his physique to 58. Such terrifying growth rate. No wonder he is a future naval admiral. But Kane's lips curled into a playful smile. A 7-point difference in physical strength is an insurmountable gap in the early stages of the One Piece world. Since you want to play, I'll play with you properly. Sakazuki is right. Kane slowly rolled up his sleeves and said in an extremely sincere tone, I do have many shortcomings, and my behavior last night was indeed inappropriate. Since you are willing to personally guide me for the sake of the Navy's future and to correct my mistakes. He raised his head, his eyes instantly sharpening, but the smile on his lips grew even more playful. I couldn't ask for more. Stop with your sarcastic remarks. Sakazuki hated this attitude the most. He roared, his muscles tensed, and a fierce aura erupted instantly. He suddenly exerted force with both legs. Boom! A cloud of dust erupted from the ground. He was like a cannonball, instantly covering a distance of over 10 meters. With his right fist clenched, there were no fancy techniques, just pure power and killing intent, aimed straight at Kane's face. If that punch landed, an ordinary person's head would be blown apart. The surrounding recruits gasped in surprise. However, Kane stood still, not even moving his heels. He only turned his head slightly when the fist, carrying a strong wind, was about to touch the tip of his nose and ruffle his bangs. Brush. A fist grazed past his ear. Too slow, Kane said softly, a hint of regret in his voice. After last night's crazy addition of 10,000 disciplinary points, his dynamic vision and reaction speed are now far beyond what they were when he first entered the camp. Sakazuki's powerful straight punch looked like a slow-motion replay to him. All you do is hide. Coward. Sakazuki changed tactics with lightning speed. When his first attack missed, he used the momentum to spin around, and his thick elbow, like a battle axe, swept towards Kane's temple. Ruthless. Precise. Showing absolutely no mercy. Kane didn't dodge this time. He raised his right arm and threw a punch. Bang! A dull thud of flesh colliding rang out. The air surged and blew, making the clothes of the surrounding students flutter and causing the stone slabs under their feet to crack instantly. But Kane didn't back down an inch, firmly blocking Sakazuki's seemingly inevitable attack. Ding! Assaulting a fellow student. Disciplinary, value plus 50. Kane's eyes lit up. 50 damage per punch. Sakazuki, if you don't beat me half to death today, or if you don't beat me half to death, neither of us is leaving here. After thinking it over, Kane pretended to be exhausted and swayed slightly. Is Chapter 9 only this bad? Sakazuki. Oh. Sakazuki was somewhat surprised. He used 70% of his strength in that elbow strike, intending to knock the kid down directly, but the other guy only swayed slightly. That's interesting. But not enough. Sakazuki roared, his body advancing instead of retreating, his left hook carrying a foul gust of wind, heading straight for Kane's open side. If that punch lands, I'll have to throw up all the undigested breakfast I just had. Kane's eyelids twitched slightly. With his current level of reflexes, he can keep up perfectly well. It was easy to dodge. But if Sakazuki manages to dodge, he'll realize he can't beat himself, so how can he rack up points? Only a brutal, hand-to-hand combat is the ultimate way to rack up points. Boom! The dull thud made the onlookers' teeth ache. Kane neither dodged nor evaded, taking the punch head-on with his side, and then unleashed a backhand whip kick straight at Sakazuki's face. Ding! Assaulting a fellow student, disciplinary points plus 80. Hearing the pleasant notification sound, Kane felt even the pain in his ribs become sweet. Good! Kane spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva and burst into laughter. Again. Didn't you eat, Sakazuki? The two instantly became locked in combat. Every punch was brutal and realistic, without any fancy probing. All were ruthless moves aimed at crippling the opponent for half a month. Sakazuki became increasingly alarmed as the fight progressed. He was confident that his physical skills were top-notch among this year's newcomers. Every punch he threw was powerful and heavy, capable of shattering even rocks. But Kane in front of me is like a piece of chewy taffy. Even though every punch landed on him with a dull thud, and even though blood was spilling from the corner of his mouth, his blue eyes burned with a kind of incomprehensible fervor. Is this guy out of his mind? Sakazuki's anger flared, and his actions became even more violent, delivering a powerful knee strike to Kane's stomach. Kane grunted, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, but he retaliated with a vicious headbutt. Boom! Two heads clashing head-on. Sakazuki staggered backward, his nose throbbing with pain, and warm liquid trickled down his philtrum. My nasal bone is fractured. Ding! Facial injury caused to fellow trainees. Disciplinary violation, points plus 100. Cool. Page 10. That was fucking awesome. Kane was inwardly laughing hysterically, but outwardly he staggered back, hastily wiping the blood off his face. He was breathing heavily, his voice hoarse yet arrogant. Sakazuki, is this all the justice you've got? You can't defeat me at all. You bastard. Sakazuki was utterly enraged. He abandoned all defense and pounced like a mad dog. Left hook. Right swing. Knee strike. Kane also raised his fist in retaliation. Ura, ura, ura. Muda. Although Kane didn't shout it out loud, that's the kind of imposing presence he had. Disciplinary violation points plus 50. Plus 50. Plus 50. The numbers on the system panel were jumping wildly, even more exciting than the slot machines in Sabyodi Archipelago. 10 minutes have passed. 20 minutes have passed. The new recruits watching held their breath, not daring to make a sound. Zephyr stood on the sidelines, his brow furrowed. He could see that Kane had several opportunities to dodge the attacks and then counterattack, but he chose to confront them head-on. Is he so proud that he'd rather get hurt than not crush his opponent head-on? Zeph imagined to himself, and his opinion of Kane rose even higher. Although he's a troublemaker, his backbone is definitely what makes him worthy of being a Marine. In the center of the field, both of them were covered in blood. Kane had one eye swollen like a peach, his clothes were tattered, and his body was covered in bruises. Sakazuki wasn't much better off. His buzz cut was covered in dust and blood. He was breathing heavily, his fists were red and swollen, and his fingers were even deformed. Ho. After another collision, the two tacitly separated and faced each other 3 meters apart. Sakazuki bent over, staring at the figure opposite him that seemed about to collapse but never actually fell. Monster. That was Sakazuki's only thought at that moment. He clearly has at least 2 broken ribs, and his internal organs must have been concussed, so why isn't he falling down? Why can you still have that unsatisfied expression? I misjudged him. Sakazuki spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva, the savagery in his eyes gradually fading, replaced by a complex emotion. He is a man who reveres power. Kane's tenacity earned him his respect. Let's stop here. Sakazuki put away his boxing stance, his voice hoarse. If you keep fighting, you'll die. Your fists are hard, Kane, and you certainly have the resolve to uphold justice. It's a draw today. After saying that, Sakazuki turned to leave. The new recruits watching breathed a sigh of relief. Kyuzen patted his chest, preparing to go up and help the person. However, a draw. A light, airy voice sounded from behind Sakazuki. Sakazuki, who gave you permission to end this game without my permission? Sakazuki abruptly stopped in his tracks. He turned around in disbelief. The man, covered in blood, slowly straightened his back, and the previous feeling of weakness and swaying disappeared instantly. Kane wiped the blood from his eyes and glanced at the system panel. Current violation value, 41,200, over 4,000 was lost in the recent brawl. That's about it, Kane thought to himself. Shearing too much wool can lead to baldness, and Sakazuki has now developed a misconception of mutual appreciation for himself, so continuing the act would seem fake. That being the case, Kane cracked his neck, producing a crisp popping sound. A chilling aura erupted from his body. Sakazuki. Kane looked at the red dog opposite him, a slight smile playing on his lips. The warm-up exercises have only just ended. From now on, please try your best to survive. Sakazuki's pupils contracted sharply, and a strong sense of crisis made the hairs on his body stand on end. This kid. He was hiding his strength the whole time. Was he using me as a practice subject? System. Add points. 6 styles shave. Upgrade to mastery. 6,000 disciplinary points consumed. Skill infusion in progress. In an instant. Countless techniques about leg muscle power, blood flow, and ground reaction force-flooded Kane's mind. His leg muscles trembled slightly beneath his trouser legs, like 2 springs compressed to their limit. I'm going in, Sakazuki. Kane's voice still echoed in the same spot. The person, however, has already disappeared. Chapter 10, Sakazuki. Your sleeping posture is so peaceful. Shave. The sound of air tearing apart took half a second to reach everyone's ears. The world before Sakazuki's eyes did not have time to change. The blonde figure vanished abruptly. Kane's provocative smile still lingered on my retina. What about people? Sakazuki's monstrous fighting instincts kicked in, sending chills down his spine. He jerked his waist and turned to defend. But it's too slow. Here I am, Sakazuki. A mocking voice drifted over from in front of me. Immediately afterwards, a fist was planted in Sakazuki's chest. What appears to be a light, effortless strike suddenly unleashes terrifying kinetic energy the moment it touches the skin. Crack. That was the sound of a sternum cracking. Puff. Sakazuki coughed up blood and instantly lost his balance. The powerful impact caused his body to bend into a shape in midair, flying backward with a piercing whistling sound. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. Boom! The granite wall at the edge of the training field, half a meter thick, collapsed inward instantly due to the enormous impact, sending debris flying and dust billowing everywhere. When the smoke cleared, everyone gasped in shock. Sakazuki was embedded in a dent in the wall in a T shape. His red shirt had been reduced to shreds, his head was tilted to one side, and his baseball cap, which he never took off, had flown to some corner. His chest heaved violently twice, and then his eyes rolled back, and he completely lost consciousness. Ding! A fellow student has been beaten unconscious. Disciplinary, value plus 300. Page 11. The entire room fell silent. The recruits opened their mouths, but couldn't utter a sound. What is this? What was just a life-or-death brawl turned into a one-sided massacre in the next second. That's shaving. Zephyr abruptly removed his sunglasses, his tiger-like eyes, which had seen countless vicissitudes of life, now filled with disbelief. He stared intently at Kane, who stood in the center of the field, slowly adjusting his cuffs. How can it be? As the head instructor, Zephyr knew better than anyone the difficulty of mastering the 6 styles. That is a superhuman skill that requires years of honing one's physical abilities and elevating one's physical qualities to an inhuman level to master. How long have these new recruits been in camp? Only a week. He only gave a brief demonstration of the principles and power generation techniques in the theory class a few days ago. Sakazuki and Borsellino, these monsters, could barely manage to execute a couple of moves in practice thanks to their extraordinary talent. But in this high-intensity real combat, they were able to use them so smoothly and precisely. This is no longer a matter of talent. This is a monster. This kid, Zephyr's throat went dry. Looking at the blonde boy's back, his eyes became incredibly complicated. He always acted so carefree, but he's been hiding his true abilities all along. While Zeph was still in shock, Kane made his move. He walked with heavy steps toward Sakazuki, who was embedded in the wall. Zephyr's nerves suddenly tensed. This kid was blinded by rage just now. Is he going to finish him off? Kane. Stop. The battle is over. Zephyr roared and flashed forward to stop him. Kane stopped in his tracks. He turned around and looked at Zephyr rushing towards him with an extremely innocent gaze. He scratched his head, a signature smile spreading across his face. Teacher, why are you so nervous? Kane sighed, looking at Sakazuki on the wall, his voice filled with deep self-reproach. Sai, it's all my fault. He spread his hands and shrugged helplessly. Just now, I was a little more serious, thinking that Sakazuki was strong enough to withstand it and then fight me for another 300 rounds. I never expected. Kane shook his head, looking utterly disappointed. He just fainted like that. I really didn't expect him to be so weak. I really went too far. How could I overestimate my classmates' abilities like that? Puff. Cusin, who was standing nearby, almost choked on his own saliva when he heard this. So fragile. A little bit more serious. Listen to this. Is this even human language? Zephyr's lips twitched violently, looking at Sakazuki's wretched state, and then at Kane's "I'm sorry, but I'm really strong" expression. His blood pressure soared. This kid, even after winning, he still wants to destroy my spirit. All right. Stop with the sarcastic remarks, Zephyr snapped, annoyed. Get him to the infirmary right now. Yes, teacher. Kane immediately stood at attention and saluted, his attitude impeccable. To make up for my mistake, I volunteer to carry Sakazuki to the infirmary myself. I want to warm his wounded heart with my own body heat. Before Zeph could refuse, Kane rushed forward and pried the unconscious Sakazuki off the wall. Then something breathtaking happened. Normally, when carrying someone on your back, you would place the injured person face down on your back with their head resting on your shoulder. But Kane refused. He turned Sakazuki over so that his bruised and swollen face, with blood dripping from his mouth, was facing straight outwards. Let's go. Sakazuki, let's go see a doctor. Kane strode briskly out of the training field. But he got lost. The way to the infirmary was clearly to the left, but he deliberately went to the right, heading straight for the administrative square, which had the highest foot traffic at headquarters. At 7 o'clock in the morning, it is the peak time for people to go to work at the Navy headquarters. Hey, isn't this Kane from the elite camp? Starting weight training so early. A passing colonel greeted him curiously. Reporting, sir. Kane stopped, deliberately puffed out his chest, and bounced Sakazuki on his back upwards to make sure the other could see his swollen face. This is my best friend, Sakazuki. He collapsed from exhaustion due to overtraining. His spirit of continuing to fight even when he faints is so moving. So I carried him around a couple more times to absorb his positive energy. Oh, you're working that hard. The colonel looked at Sakazuki's battered face with awe and respect, although it looks like he's been beaten up. The training in the elite class is indeed brutal. He's a good prospect. Kane smiled broadly, his feet never stopping. From the administration building to the family quarters, and then to the entrance of the canteen. Along the way, Kane displayed Sakazuki's miserable state to most of Marineford, as if he were showing off a trophy. Ding! Publicly executing a future marshal has caused a negative impact. Disciplinary value plus 150. Ding! False advertising has damaged the reputation of fellow students. Disciplinary value plus 80. Kane grinned from ear to ear as he listened to the pleasant notification sound. An hour later, headquarters medical office. The strong smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. Sakazuki let out a painful groan. Consciousness gradually returned. The last memory is frozen on the moment that damn blonde kid disappeared, and the sharp pain in my chest. We lost. I actually lost. A strong sense of humiliation surged through him, and Sakazuki abruptly opened his eyes and sat up abruptly in bed. Kane! The furious roar made the IV stand vibrate loudly. But he froze after yelling. The ward was bustling with activity. Zephyr stood by the window with a dark expression. Borsellino was clipping his nails with his legs crossed, and Cusin was looking at him with pity. And right next to the hospital bed, that blonde bastard was holding a bowl of medicine, looking at him with a smirk. Sunlight streamed through the window and fell on Kane's face, his blonde hair dazzlingly bright, and his blue eyes filled with a motherly tenderness. Awake! Kane picked up a spoon, scooped up a spoonful of the unknown liquid, and even thoughtfully blew on it to warm it before handing it to Sakazuki's lips. Come on, Sakazuki, it's time for your medicine. Sakazuki felt a chill run down his spine and instinctively shrank back, aggravating his chest injury and causing him to grimace in pain. Get away from me. Don't touch me with your filthy hands. Don't be so formal. After all, we fought together and have formed a bond. Kane ignored everything and shoved the spoon directly at Sakazuki's mouth, his tone so sincere it was nauseating. I'm so sorry about earlier. You seemed so confident, I thought you had some skills. Who knew you were so easily defeated? Look, this medicine was specially brewed for you. It's good for your brain. Oh no, I mean, for your blood. Sakazuki's face instantly turned a deep liver color, and the veins on his neck bulged. You, who are you calling fragile? Page 12. Oh, that's what everyone says. Kane sighed and said earnestly, when I carried you here just now, all the officers who passed by saw you. You were sleeping so peacefully on my back, with blood blisters on your nose. Everyone was moved by the sight of you, training so hard that you fainted. Now the whole of Marineford is talking about your deeds, crispy Iron Man, Sakazuki. The whole. Marineford. Everyone saw it. A blood blister was hanging from his nose. Sakazuki felt a buzz in his head, and his blood pressure instantly exceeded the critical value. He's the mighty Sakazuki, the future pillars of the Navy. Not only was I knocked unconscious by this bastard, but I was also paraded through the streets like a monkey. You bastard. Sakazuki's finger, which was pointing at Kane, trembled violently, and he couldn't catch his breath. Puff! He spat out another mouthful of blood. Immediately afterwards, this tough guy, known for his iron will, rolled his eyes and fell straight back onto the pillow. She was so angry that she fainted. Ding! Verbal provocation caused a fellow student to faint twice, resulting in severe psychological trauma. Disciplinary value plus 500. Ah! Kane exclaimed in surprise, and the spoon in his hand clattered into the bowl. He turned his head and looked at Zephyr with an innocent expression. Zeph, something's wrong. Sakazuki fainted from excitement. He must have been so happy from feeling the love of his comrades that he was starved of oxygen. Zephyr took a deep breath. He glanced at his own iron fist, then at Kane's innocent-looking face. I've never wanted to kill my student so much in my life. Roll. Chapter 11, Slacking Off. No, this is called ambiguous justice. The door to the infirmary slammed shut. In the corridor, Zephyr's chest heaved violently. Now he regrets it a little. Why was he blinded by that excellent physical test data and brought this troublemaker into the elite camp? Not only did they knock someone unconscious, they also carried them around and paraded them through the streets as a public spectacle. Parading them through the streets was bad enough, but they also angered someone who had just woken up, causing them to faint again. Is this something a human would do? Teacher Zephyr. Kane stood in the shadows of the corridor, still holding the medicine spoon in his hand, his face full of innocence. Sakazuki's psychological defenses are far too weak. Kane sighed, his tone filled with worry for his comrades' future. As Marines, we'll be facing ruthless pirates in the future. If we can't even handle this little bit of care between comrades, how will we establish ourselves in the new world? As he spoke, Kane stepped forward, his eyes sincere. Teacher, I have a suggestion, though it may be premature. To enhance students' resilience, I suggest adding a resilience counseling course to the elite camp. Although I am very busy with training, I am willing to sacrifice my personal rest time to serve as a lecturer free of charge, specifically responsible for. Shut up. Zephyr's roar interrupted Kane's spellcasting. You still want to be an instructor. Do you want to turn all the new recruits into bastards like you? Everything for justice, teacher. Still talking back. Zephyr pointed to the end of the corridor, his fingers trembling. Get to the port. Get on my warship. Scrub the deck clean. If it's not clean by dinner time, you can go catch fish in the sea. Kane snapped to attention, his heels slamming against the ground with a loud thud. Yes. I guarantee I'll complete the task. I will not let my teacher down. Roll. Zephyr kicked the air. Kane seized the opportunity to turn around and slipped away faster than a rabbit. Ho, ho. Zephyr was breathing heavily, feeling that his blood pressure was a bit high. After calming myself down, I scanned the surroundings. Cusin, who was crouching against the wall preparing to sneak up, froze. Here, here. You want to stay and keep me company? Zephyr sneered. Or do you think you didn't run enough with that 2,000 kilograms of weight last night? Teacher, I suddenly remembered that I haven't finished my training. I request to go back for extra practice. Cusin's survival instinct kicked in, and he took off running. Just kidding. If you run into bad luck at this time, you'll be lucky to escape with your life. Warriors like Kane are a minority. In the blink of an eye, the corridor was empty. Only at the far end of the bench sat a figure who didn't seem inclined to move. Borsellino sat with his legs crossed, his brown sunglasses reflecting a cold light, holding nail clippers in his hand. Click, click. Even with Zephyr's rage filling the air, he remained as steady as a mountain, even holding up his repaired finger to admire it under the light. Oh, tilde, my nails are a bit stubby, tilde, that looks weird, tilde. That lazy tone, paired with that smug, lewd expression. The nameless anger that Zephyr had just suppressed suddenly surged up again. Borsellino. Zephyr walked over with a gloomy face, his tall shadow enveloping the monkey-like youth. Click. Borsellino's hand trembled, and the nail clippers cut his flesh. Sighed tilde. He gasped, his signature sleazy face turning around. Behind his brown sunglasses, he blinked and pouted, saying, Zeph sensei, tilde, what happened, tilde, you're blocking the light, tilde. Zephyr looked at that face, and his fist hardened. You're really bored, aren't you? Zephyr gritted his teeth. Your companion is lying in a hospital bed, and you're out there clipping your nails. Borsellino tilted his head and shrugged. But teacher, tilde, I can't help with medical matters either, tilde. It cannot be helped. Zephyr revealed a sinister smile. Then go do something to help. Kane can't finish cleaning that warship by himself, so go help him. If the two of you aren't done cleaning by dinner, the meat rations for this week are cancelled. A tilde. Borsellino was stunned. The nail clippers in my hand fell to the ground with a clatter. I'm just here to enjoy some food. Teacher Tilda, this isn't fair, Tilda. Borsellino tried to struggle. It was that monster Kane who knocked Sakazuki unconscious, Tilda. I was just passing by, Tilda. Don't want to go, Zephyr sneered, his domineering aura subtly surging. Then you want to spar with me here? Borsellino stood up instantly, moving with the speed of some kind of primate. Oh, this is terrifying, Tilda. I'm going, okay. Zephyr-sensei is so strict, Tilda. The midday sun was blazing. Zephyr's personal warship is a gigantic vessel, docked in the harbor like a small steel mountain. Its massive, dark deck is so enormous it inspires despair. Kane stood in the middle of the deck, carrying 2 buckets, looking up at the scorching sun, then at the tall, thin figure next to him, also carrying a mop and looking like he was wondering, who am I? Where am I? At this point, Borsellino, while not yet possessing the seasoned, pay-to-win mentality of a future admiral, was already showing signs of being a lazy bum. He wore brown sunglasses, pouted, and sighed as he looked at the massive deck. What bad luck. I have to do this kind of rough work in the middle of the day. Page 13. Borsellino slowly shoved the mop onto the ground, leaning limply against it, showing absolutely no desire to lift a finger. Bang! Kane casually tossed the bucket in his hand and plopped down in the huge shadow behind the main gun turret. He casually pulled 2 golden oranges from his pocket and tossed one to Borsellino. Next, let's cool off in the heat. Borsellino caught it instinctively, feeling the orange peel still slightly cool. His eyes behind his sunglasses lit up for a moment, then he hesitated. Hey, Kane, Professor Zeph, is in a really bad mood right now. If you slack off and get caught, you really could get thrown into the sea to feed the fish. That's really scary. Be lazy. Kane popped a segment of orange into his mouth, and juice spilled out. He looked at Borsellino as if he were an alien. Borsellino, your ideology is seriously flawed. Oh. How so? Borsellino became interested, leaned against the railing, casually crossed his long legs, and began to peel an orange. Think about it, Kane mumbled, popping a segment of orange into his mouth. What is the Navy's duty? It's to catch pirates and protect civilians, right? That's right, Tilda. What if a group of vicious pirates suddenly appeared, like Shiki or Whitebeard? And you, Borsellino, because you spent 3 hours scrubbing the deck under the scorching sun, your back ached and your strength was exhausted, causing you to be 0.1 seconds slower at the crucial moment, and you were killed by the opponent with a single blow. Kane paused, his expression suddenly turning extremely serious, and pointed at Borsellino's nose. Then you are a sinner to the Navy. You have not only let yourself down, but also the civilians who were waiting for you to save them. Borsellino's hand, holding the orange, froze in midair. Hissler. It sounds a bit strange, but it makes a lot of sense. So that's why. Kane spoke earnestly, then stuffed the half-peeled orange he had prepared into Borsellino's hand. We are sitting here eating oranges now to prepare for a fierce battle that may occur at any time, and we must conserve our energy. We are taking responsibility for the justice of the future. Kane held up a finger and waved it in front of Borsellino, saying solemnly, This isn't laziness, it's called ambiguous justice. Finding the optimal solution between action and inaction, that's the justice of the wise. Ding! Wrong theories have been instilled in the future general, successfully constructing a closed loop of lazy logic, accelerating the formation of the future general's worldview. Determining the level of subversion. A logical genius. Disciplinary violation, value plus 800. That's it. Kane was overjoyed inside. but on the surface, he still maintained a look of concern for the country and its people. Borsellino stared at the orange in his hand for a long time, the lewd smile on his lips gradually widening until it finally turned into a knowing smile, as if he had found a kindred spirit. He plopped down next to Kane, mimicking Kane by stretching out his long legs and comfortably leaning against the gun emplacement. "Kane, you're really scary, Tilda. I've learned a lot. I really like this kind of justice." He stuffed the orange